Linda, welcome back.
Welcome.
We
Good to
have
see you,
a very
Sam.
special guest today in Lynzy Groves. Lynzy's going to talk to us today about Alzheimer's and the walk to end Alzheimer's. Lynzy, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
We're so excited to have you on. We know from experience that if people haven't experienced Alzheimer's upfront and personal, that they probably will at some point.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately, it's a growing problem across the entire United States and the world.
In the world, yeah. And so tell us a little bit about the walk. How did it get started and where can we go from there?
Sure. So the Alzheimer Association has evolved a lot and since 1980. So we really came together actually a few years ago, to be perfectly honest. We had chapters operating all across the country, and then we unified to really work through what was known as the memory walk. For those of you who
Okay,
have
okay,
heard of
okay.
us in the past, we are
Mhm.
now the Walk to End Alzheimer's for about the last 7 years. So we really see the Walk to End Alzheimer's events across the country. Like locally, I'm in Pittsburgh. We're one of the top walks in the country. But what we see in 600 plus communities across the United States, that this is the largest form of community we can have. I always call it our largest support group that the Alzheimer's associations offer locally. But it's a tangible way to fight back against a disease that really steals so much from us.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned one thing, community.
Mhm.
This disease affects so many. I mean, my mom uh,
Right.
had Alzheimer's and died from complications from it. And when she had her last stroke, the um, uh, hospital in Denver, I can't remember the name of it now, Linda, the primary stroke hospital there in Denver, when they did
oh,
all the
okay.
scan, huh?
No, I know which one you mean, but I can't
Yeah,
think of it. They've all changed names now, so
yeah, I know. But when they did all the scans and everything, she only had 25% of her brain was functioning.
Yeah,
So,
that's truly unfortunate, and really, it's the best asset we have with this disease is time. So trying to
mhm,
get an early diagnosis and not letting it get to the point
yeah.
where really intervention isn't successful. We're working on some things with the different research projects across the world to hopefully help later stage Alzheimer's. But really, right now, our hope is in that early access to care. And just really trying to reduce the wait times people have to get in these specialists.
I see.
So, correct me if and maybe I'm off base here a little bit, but I know that especially in seniors, because I know because I just had my annual Medicare, what are these 5 words or 3 words or whatever? Isn't there something a little more advanced than try to remember these words to help clinicians uh, begin to look for signs?
There are some things in the pipeline, and some actually
Okay.
in Pittsburgh is one of the reasons I love to go on shows like this to share my city and our progress, because
Okay.
we are really spearheading the fight for those early diagnostics tools. So we don't play as much in the drug space as some other locations across the country,
Hmm.
but at the University of Pittsburgh, they have created a blood test. It is approved. It will be approved, I should say, by Medicare and Medicaid. We already passed the law in the state of Pennsylvania, and we're working. I don't know if every state in the United States has covered that yet, but that's not my area of expertise. But what we are seeing now is just trying to reduce the cost in general, and access to getting that tool is a little bit confusing for primary care physicians and some of the other physicians that we're working with. Because if we could have a blood test, those who want to know would probably be running to their doctor's door, trying to get that simple test to see if we have a genetic component,
Right.
especially in people that have family histories. Like, I mean,
Right.
myself included, I would want to know.
Hmm. Yeah. It. I will say that it's somewhat comforting
Mhm.
and somewhat not. I have two of the four markers,
Right.
and so, but then again, that blood test was done to try and qualify for a clinical trial.
Hmm.
So I have no idea what that blood test would have cost outside of
Right.
doing it that way, and so um, uh, the walk. What is the primary goal and focus for the walk?
Sure. So, I mean, with any charity nonprofit walk, we're trying to raise as much money as
Mhm.
possible to keep our research funding going. Just as an
Mhm.
example, in the city of Pittsburgh, we last year we raised a little over $700,000 to. We get to keep that money right in our own backyard with our own research studies, which is nice. So I at least can brag about that with my local teams and business partners. But when we think of the grand scheme of what the Alzheimer Association does, is we invest our prime most of our funding that we fundraise, whether it's through the walks or some of the other things that we do as an association, into research. That's our primary focus. We Over the past few years, you've probably seen in the news, we've had some drugs that were released that help reduce the beta amyloid plaque buildup in the brain. Some are better than others, so we've discontinued some that weren't as effective and have new ones in the pipeline as well. But there are two right now that are on the market and are FDA approved. That are, I mean, we've worked with people that are on the drug, so we can at least say from a personal perspective, we can see that it's working.
I see.
Um, it's buying more time in essence. So when we take apart the research and the drug side of the organization, what else do we do? And most people don't realize what else we do in our communities. We're funding support groups, especially for early onset and caregivers. So you can go on alz.org and find a support group near you. We also do free education. So if you reach out to your local chapter, we can actually provide 13 different educational programs, from knowing the warning signs to 10 ways to love your brain, which is very popular with HR groups at
Mhm.
different companies, even down to something as specific as first responder training and of recognizing those symptoms in individuals that they're responding to managing finances for caregivers.
Mhm.
So we
Yeah.
really listen to our constituency base and try to learn where folks need more education. Um, at the same time, making sure that we have access that is free for everyone. So we pride ourselves in our education and general awareness. Um, but we also work in public policy. So we have an
Yeah.
entire team dedicated. We know that, I mean, I grew up in a small town. We know that there were undocumented cases of dementia even within my own family,
Mhm.
especially after you get a confirmed diagnosis from one individual. But the likelihood we'll reach 100% of a population is slim to none. The only way we can do that is through public policy changes. So you'll see a lot of legislation moving through that has the Alzheimer's Association name attached to it. Most notably, recently, is a bill that's about helping caregivers get a tax refund or tax credit, I should say, for caring for a loved one with a disease. So that is currently somewhere in the process of becoming a law. Again, not my area of expertise, but
Right.
it's very exciting to see that we're trying to give back to those who give so much to the individuals living with the disease. And last but certainly not least, it basically making sure that we are funding all these things. So that's
Mhm.
what we do. That's what my specialty is at the association, and development is making sure that we have meaningful fundraising programs that people want to be at, that have a good time with, that have that camaraderie that they can return to year after year, and basically put on their own boxing gloves in this fight. That's
Yeah.
really the best, other than participating in some trials and in your care. That's the best way we can fight this disease.
Right. It's a very complex and interesting disease. Um, when you look at just in my own situation with my mom, for example, so some of her thought processes, she remembered my mother-in-law. Now, she had not met my mother-in-law many times, probably at the wedding, maybe one or two other times,
Mhm,
and she was already probably started in the early stages, right? But she could remember her
mhm,
and somewhat my wife, but not me.
mhm,
And before she got to a point where she wouldn't take telephone call.
mhm.
So no matter how far away I was, always talk to her at least once a week.
Right.
And but So there was no recognition, I guess. When we were up there right before she passed, she recognized my granddaughter, the granddaughter whose baby I have today. Um, and you could see a sparkle. You could see it in her eyes, right? And but then you don't know what she's thinking,
Mhm.
and she has no way to express it.
Right.
So
It's tough. It's really, it takes so much from
mhm,
not only the individual dealing with the disease, but from the family that
mhm,
is doing the same journey as well, just in a different capacity. And we hear that a lot. And in personal experience, I mean, every single person that I work with in the Pittsburgh office is personally affected by this disease. And just hearing those stories, for even from the teams that walk with us, it it's truly that every person is different with how
mhm.
this disease impacts them, whether it's Alzheimer's or of the many other forms of dementia. They're also systematically different, that you can pinpoint some things that, create a cluster of symptoms that make sense for one thing, but it
Mhm.
impacts so many different people in so many different ways, with modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. My grandfather, we think he had vascular dementia. He had a few strokes in his life and was a lab chemist. So there's probably something to do with pollution, but
Mhm.
there's just not enough research in that area specifically to confirm that. But he remembered us, maybe not our names. That wasn't important to me, at least, but it was just remarkable what the long term memory
Right,
they
right.
have versus the new. And I think he thought I was my mom. I looked just like her, so it made a lot of sense that he was
Mhm.
still familiar. But I know what you mean by that
Yeah,
sparkle. You know they're still there. They're just, that
yeah.
communication piece is really, I think, what's the most
Mhm.
devastating.
Yeah. It was funny after we left for one visit, mom told my sisters that I was her great grandfather, whom she'd never met, but seen a picture.
Oh,
So
she
it's
remembered the picture,
yeah,
and your face matched
exactly,
that picture.
exactly, exactly. So talk a little bit about caregivers, and you mentioned something about some legislation for tax credit and stuff like that. So part of the problem with caregivers is that it's a full time job.
It is.
Mhm.
And that's something that I focus a lot with the business side of our partnerships as an association. We are losing so many people in the workforce because it just is simply cheaper to give the care ourselves. And again, I'm not nothing against moving people into living arrangements that make more sense, or if you can take care of your loved one, that's fantastic too. It's whatever makes sense for the person. But
Right.
really, if you think about it, there are nearly 12 million Americans that are providing unpaid care
Mhm.
Mhm.
for Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, and that's basically costing us as a country about $413 billion a year, and it has no sign of slowing down. I know personally from our experience, my mom, at the height of her career, ended up leaving so that she could take care of her dad. And at that point, you do that for a few years. You let your own health go. You aren't the area of focus, and then when that person is gone, now what? You're how many years later is it reasonable to go back? Are you physically able to go back to work? Like, there's a lot of questions that are left open ended. And
Yeah.
it's not just that sandwich generation either. We're seeing rates of diagnoses that are far lower and lower.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even a local individual family that we work with, all five of the kids have the genetic markers for it, and two have already passed. One was diagnosed at age 29.
Wow.
So getting that access to care, let alone having someone listen to you that you may have Alzheimer's or dementia at such a young age, it's very difficult to navigate that space. So
Yeah.
I don't envy any caregiver's work. I mean, they do an immense amount to make sure that their loved ones are advocated for and are important. That we lose that sense of importance, we lose that sense of humanity sometimes in the fight for caregiving. But we also don't want them to be forgotten, because they
Right.
are the ones that we really want to make sure are supported. And that's why we try to keep access to resources for caregivers as at the fingertips as possible, especially through like our helpline. Our helpline is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year, where a licensed or master's level clinician will literally pick up the phone, and the average call time is 43 minutes. So
Wow.
that it's not a robot. That you're talking to someone that can help diffuse a situation at 2 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve, or something like that. So really, we pride ourselves in an organization in making sure that caregivers know that they have access to someone that can help 24 hours a day.
And
Yeah.
I think when you look at, especially with it showing up at younger and younger ages,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
in my age group, I'm 63. We expected to look after my parents as they got older. You know, my dad was 90 when he passed from Parkinson's, and my mom was in her mid 80s. And you kind of expect that. You don't necessarily expect to be taking care of your parents when they're in their 60s and 70s. Um, not in my generation. And you mentioned the sandwich generation, because they're taking care of their families at home, and
Right.
then they've
Right.
got to manage this. Where do they find time to do anything else, right?
Wow. Yeah. And if like we had some staggering statistics with our facts and figures that came out last year, and it did not change all that much moving into 2025. But the lifetime risk for a woman over age 45 is 1 in 5. Over the age of 45, we don't talk about numbers that low. We usually are used to hearing everything with like Medicare qualification age at 65. So if you think about someone that's diagnosed, let's just say under age 50 with early onset, which we know several, many, that's diminishing the amount. We know so many that it's sad. Um, they're taking care of their families that are probably still in school. They have kids that are still in school. They have parents that are aging as well. And then you have to think, okay, now that I have this, there's so many other questions that we have that are outstanding because it's such a young diagnosis. Um, it could also be with the younger onset too. Like grandparents might be taking care of the little ones, like we have right now too, if that's the case. So there's a lot of unanswered questions with how this is going to impact the generational gap, because caregiving is becoming more and more common with people, especially in their college years,
And I
than
think,
in the past.
when you think about you're taking care of your parents at home,
Hmm.
most people that are doing that aren't trained caregivers.
Correct. No, these
Um,
these people are usually do not have a medical background. I know we didn't. That's for sure.
my friend took care of her mom. Her mom lived alone. I don't think it wasn't Alzheimer's, but she had some kind of memory disorder.
Mhm.
And what would happen is Lydia would get a call in the middle of the night and have to drive 20 minutes over
Right.
to help her mom.
Yeah.
And her mom was a big lady that needed help. And Lydia, like if she was on the floor, Lydia couldn't pick her up.
Right.
So she would get there and then she would call the ambulance and they would come out and they would come help. And she wouldn't let anybody stay with her.
Mm.
It was her house. And they had thought at one time that they had set up a policy where she could be taken care of at home. And then they
Mm.
found out that that policy would only pay $75 a day.
Yeah.
Not You're not going to get
No. No.
any kind of care at
No.
$75 a day. That's
And
not even 2 hours.
no.
But more and more, we're seeing that the caregivers are people like us that
Mhm.
you're learning as you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's, that's I found with my sisters was the same way. And it wasn't until um, uh, Jean, who's a second oldest sister, she um, was primary caregiver. She did it for years. And every once in a while, my oldest sister would come down from Massachusetts and help her. And then Lois, who's the baby of the family, she moved out from Kansas to help. And so once they started in a rotation like that, it worked out a lot better for them. But boy,
Right.
there for that first year, Jean was doing it all. And I thought she was going to break. I was like everything I could to, I'm in Florida, they're in Pennsylvania. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
It's really hard, especially caregiving at a distance, because you want to be there or you need someone to tag in, and it's really it's costing families a lot more than the
yeah.
finances.
Yeah.
Truly.
So,
Definitely.
Lynzy, we're kind of running out of time for this week. I want us to come back here, and I really want to focus on the walk and what people can do locally. Are you willing to come back on?
Absolutely.
All right. Then, Linda, do you have any final thoughts before we go for today and we come back?
Just final thought is that you're not alone,
Mhm.
and there are organizations like Lynzy's that are there to help. So don't suffer in silence.
No,
All
we're
right.
here to help.
Folks, thank you for listening to Balancing Act, Living Life in Harmony with Lynzy Groves and the Walk to End Alzheimer's.